For more winter weather this weekend, including cold temperatures and the possibility of ice, it raises a bigger question beyond the forecast.
Yeah, is North Carolina doing enough to protect its power grid before the next major storm hits? Let's start with where things stand right now. Here in the Carolinas tonight, the picture is improving. According to Duke Energy, that outage map, fewer than 200 customers still without power tonight. Most of those outages, they're in western North Carolina, where crews say road conditions are still slowing those restoration efforts. Kim?
Crews have been working around the clock since the winter storm moved through. As of Monday afternoon, the company reported restoring power to more than 131,000 customers across North and South Carolina. But beyond our state lines, the situation looks very different. To put it simply, we were lucky. I want you to take a look at this map from poweroutage.us. Across parts of the southeast, tens of thousands of people are still without power tonight, and this is days after the storm. Tennessee remains the hardest hit with more than 119,000 outages tonight. Mississippi has more than 105,000 customers still in the dark, and Louisiana about 63,000. Those impacts are why lawmakers here in North Carolina are starting to ask a deeper question: whether voluntary grid upgrades are enough, or whether the state needs stronger safeguards in place.
Yeah, right now, North Carolina does not require utilities to weatherize their systems for extreme cold. There are no state laws forcing power companies to strengthen infrastructure. Duke Energy says it has made significant improvements on its own. But again, those upgrades are voluntary, not mandated by the state. We spoke with Duke Energy just last week about what makes winter storms so damaging, especially when ice is involved.
It only takes about a quarter of an inch of ice to start to bring down tree limbs on power lines. If you get to half an inch of ice on the power lines, they can begin to sag and break as well.
That kind of vulnerability is exactly what pushed Texas to act. Remember back in 2021, a deadly winter storm left millions of Texans without power. There were hundreds of deaths after the grid failed. In the aftermath, Texas lawmakers passed laws requiring utilities to weatherize power plants and transmission lines. Voters also approved a $10 billion Texas Energy Fund to help pay for those improvements through state-backed loans and incentives. But just 2 years after Texas, North Carolina saw grid issues of its own. Because of freezing temperatures, Duke had to resort to rolling blackouts to keep the grid going. Remember Christmas Eve 2022? Company blamed a colder than expected forecast for higher demand and equipment failures, and has since taken action to upgrade the grid.
But unlike Texas, North Carolina didn't pass new grid laws after the storm. Instead, most grid improvements here rely on federal grants and partnerships outside of what power companies fund themselves. Now, that money flows through the state's Department of Environmental Quality and its state energy office, and it's limited and competitive. And that brings us back to the coast. Of course, Duke Energy says that it wants to invest about $1 billion to continue to strengthen the grid and improve reliability. But without state mandates or large-scale state funding, much of that cost, well, of course, that's going to fall on you, a customer. And we're talking about here. That's why Duke Energy is asking state regulators to approve a 15% rate increase spread over the next 2 years. If approved, the average household would see an increase of about $17 a month starting in 2027, followed by another increase of about $6 a month in 2028. Governor Josh Stein has pushed back on that proposal, saying the increase is too high at a time when families are already struggling with rising costs. Ultimately, this decision will rest with the North Carolina Utilities Commission, which plans to hold public hearings later this spring. Grid upgrades are necessary. That's not a question, but the question is, who pays? Customers, the state, or a mix of both? That debate still unfolding tonight, just as another round of winter weather looms.